Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. I'm your host, Chris Salem. I hope that you're all having a great week. You found us here at the TALRadio platform. And again, we hope that you're enjoying a lot of the wide variety of different content you can find here on the TALRadio platform. We are excited that we've been now over 4 years with TALRadio. It is hard to believe. And we pioneered their business section of the TALRadio.org platform. And again, we've been around now, approaching now about 250 episodes. It's hard to believe, but we want to thank you, the loyal listeners that have been with us from day one. And again, for anybody, the new listeners, you could also listen to us not only on TALRadio, but also on YouTube under TALRadio, as well as Spotify, Apple, and so on. So we hope that you're receiving value. And our sponsor for this week is Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it takes all the noise out of social media. You get to generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got a great show today. We're going to be talking about the pivot process, and that is an acronym, and you'll find out what that means. A systems-based approach to sustainable leadership change. So you're going to learn all about how that can help you, whether if you are not only a small business, but also a Fortune 500 company. And we are here with Dr. Wayne D. Wilson. He's an executive coach, cultural strategist, a leadership catalyst with over 30 years experience across corporate leadership, psychotherapy, and organizational development. He coached senior leaders in healthcare, transportation, and mission-driven sectors to align performance with purpose and lead with emotional intelligence. As the former director of organizational development at Snyder Fleet Solutions and founder of Snyder University, Wayne is recognized for helping teams pivot through change and embed trust-driven, values-based leadership at every level. His bold yet empathetic coaching style helps executives elevate retention, engagement, and leadership impact, especially during transitions or high-stress periods. And without further ado, we welcome Dr. Wayne D. Wilson to the show. Hi, Dr. Wayne.
It's so good to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me.
It is great to have you. And, I've gotten to know you over the last few weeks, and I know you bring so much great wisdom and insight. And I guess, we'll start, the show today about, what is the pivot process? Let's kind of take it from there, and then maybe each letter of that acronym has or is a methodology or a process to what you're going to talk about us today.
Yeah. So I'll take you back to the beginning, right? Begin with the end in mind, right? Yeah. So the beginning was pivot. My business, Pivot Services, Pivot Coaching Consulting, began out of my pivot. So I had spent a career in ministry, and then I transitioned. I got a doctorate in counseling and organizational development, and was running outpatient counseling centers for Wake Forest Baptist Health. And it was a great run, and I had 18 years of a great run, but it had come to a halt, and it was really time to go. And so my transition from 18 years of running mental health counseling centers and doing counseling and psychotherapy pivoted into coaching. And I went from really a reactive helping relationship, which is what counseling psychotherapy is, into a proactive counseling relationship, which is really what coaching is. And it was a big pivot for me. I not only went working for someone else to working for myself, but it was also a career shift from licensed counseling into coaching. I didn't know it at the time, but that then led me into another pivot in which I then was hired by Snyder Fleet Solutions to be their director of professional development. I started just coaching, and then I ended up developing their entire learning and development system, which is called Snyder University. So I had 8 years, just short of 10 years in that company. It's a large company, it's 1,000 employees. So I got to apply all the things that I'd learned in a 1,000 employee company over 11 states and 80 some locations, and apply those principles on a big scale. So I really do know they work, all the way from the small business owner, me, to a large 1,000 employee company that covers, the country. It's just a bigger ship and it takes longer to turn, but the principles are the same. So pivot came from my pivot. But then in reflection of what it is and what is it that I do and how is it that I help people and how do I transition that from counseling, psychotherapy into coaching, it occurred to me there's a process here that I've used forever that I know works, and it formed into the same letters, PIVOT. And I just knew that I had it at that point. And it's really, I wrote the book really as a guide to my own clients. I give it to all my clients, purchase it on Amazon, and it's the guide to our work together. So it can be a self-guide. Folks on your show can get it and use it as their own guide to their own process, or it could be a guided process, which is really what I do in my coaching. So pivot is also an acronym. P, pause in the present to perceive the real problem. There are always there are issues under the issue. There are multiple levels of an issue. What's the real problem? So we pause long enough to reflect. If people have been following me on LinkedIn recently, they've noticed that I've spent almost a month really emphasizing the need to pause and reflect. It's really important that we pause and give some reflective thought. Otherwise, we're in reactive mode all the time, and all we're doing is putting out fires. All we're doing is putting out fires. So P, pause in the present to perceive, and then internalize. And this is what I've noticed over the years, moving from counseling into coaching, that the large percentage, I'm not going to spout out a number off the top of my head, but I would say the majority of executive leaders in mid to large size companies, 25 employees or more and above, this is outside their comfort zone. This is not where they want to go. They do not want to go internal and pay attention to what's going on inside of themselves, either their own feelings or their own thoughts or their own feelings. You know what they tell me, Chris? You know what the common phrase is? When we go to the I and internalize, Dr. Wayne, I ain't got time for this. I ain't got time for this. And so they want to skip it, and they just want to jump to the solutions. And then they make rash decisions, and they make reactive decisions. So once you've paused, then you need to internalize. Is this congruent? Is what you're about to do congruent with your values? Is it congruent with who you are? What are your feelings as you go into this? What kind of vulnerabilities do those feelings lead you to? What are you feeling good about? What are you excited? What is congruent with who you are? What's going on inside of you? Internalize. What I've discovered, you can only really create a fresh vision when you're not carrying baggage. You ever notice that?
Yeah. When again, without baggage, you have more clarity and focus. At least I do.
So I learned this from an organization in California called Heart Math. Yes, your listeners can look it up. Heart Math. It's actually now a guided process that you can get it on the phone. Back in the 90s and early 2000s when I was using it, you had to purchase equipment to be able to monitor your heart rate variance, which is what they monitor, your heart rate variance and how it changes. And Heart Math designed a process to monitor your heart rate variance and your thought process. And how does your actual body react to what you're thinking about? Long story made short, they realized, and you can prove this to yourself on their app, that if you are in an anxious state of mind, you cannot think clearly. But when you have centered yourself and calmed yourself, when your heart rate is in an actual literal sinus rhythm, then you can ask yourself, what does the ideal future look like? And you can actually think about it. If you ask yourself, what does the ideal future look like? And you're carrying baggage, all you're doing is reacting to what you don't want. You're not truly creating a vision. So now you create a vision. So the V is you create a vision. Once you've created a clear, concise, compelling vision of the future and why this is important to the organization, the employees of the organization, the customers of the organization, and the communities that the organization functions in, now you can operationalize that. We create a strategic plan in the classic sense of the word, and we break it down into delegations and who's accountable for what. We give it a timetable, and we track the living daylights out of it. And that's when it begins to happen. So then we execute on it. So pause in the present, internalize, create a new vision with a clear mind, operationalize that into a strategy, give it a timetable, and track it till you've completed it. That's the pivot process.
Wow, powerful. And, when we now look at this, now that, you've talked about this, and where can now this approach, this systems-based approach, be utilized in leadership? And, is it right now because, that people have to get to a burnout stage in order to, or this is something they should be recognizing now to offset and be proactive against burnout, no matter what title that may be?
Well, I will say this to you. A part of my pivot from 18 years as a mental health counselor and executive director of healthcare system came from a burnout. And I did not pause really long enough and internalize well enough to really have a sense of what my sense of urgency and my constant sense of driving was doing to me, and it did point me at a very severe burnout. And so the need to pivot on an extreme way did come from burnout. And a pivot can be a critical need for change. But Chris, I do this every Sunday night. I do it every Sunday night with next week in mind. And this can be done on a consistent, regular basis. It can be done in a quarterly retreat scenario with your top executives. I've done that. I did it in December with 2 executives. We spent a day and a half together, got away, spent a day and a half in a conference room together and did it. One with all 7 of his businesses. And we reflected and built visions and operationalized that. And so it can be a strategic planning process. So this can be applied in a number of different ways on a large scale and a small scale. But the order of the process is important, and you can't skip a step.
So let's talk about that, because a lot of times people are impatient and they think that, I can do that. Explain why it's important that you skip those steps. It's a process. Like you said, it's a system-based process.
It's a system-based process, and it's all wrapped up in what Robert Anderson describes in the book Mastering Leadership. Robert Anderson describes in Mastering Leadership, which is the framework to the leadership circle 360 that I use in coaching. So the leadership circle 360 is designed around Dr. Anderson's work. And he says in Mastering Leadership, leadership tends to be either or. It's either largely reactive or it's largely creative or proactive. It's really very difficult, if not impossible, to have feet in both of those. To some degree we do, but the large percentage of your leadership is going to fall in a creative, proactive, forward-looking state of mind, or it's going to tend in a reactive, firefighting, controlling, self-protecting state of mind. If you skip steps in the process, you're going to have a tendency to swing to either reactive leadership, or you're going to have a tendency to swing to extremes in proactive, creative leadership. It's only in having walked through this process in a systematic kind of way that you lead yourself, or in a coaching relationship, the coach leads you through being ready, clear-minded, emotionally grounded, centered, in order to create a value-centered vision based on a compelling future. And only then can you truly develop a strategic plan based on what's most important? You and I both know, and all of your listeners know, that 80 to 90% of strategic plans are built around the revenue you want to generate or the EBITDA you're trying to create. That's not a vision. That's a financial plan.
Yeah, well, the vision's a lot more than that, yes, because there's a lot of factors that went into that EBITDA, and if you take that for granted, that EBITDA may not be the same the following year.
Well, you know what I've noticed in a large corporation? Your EBITDA is a reflection of how your team executed the strategic plan that you developed, and was what you thought would be of value to your customers, was it truly of value? If it was, they paid a good margin for that. And if your team executed well, they executed your strategy, which I guarantee you generated for profit. If the answer to any of those is no, then you can go back and assess. So the EBITDA is a measuring stick of value for my customers and the effectiveness or efficiency of execution of my team. So it's a lag measure. It's a great lag measure, but your financial plan is not a strategic plan. It's just a financial roadmap of where you hope you're going to go. So
true. So true. I love what you shared there. It's such great insight into that. How does, what I'd like to maybe talk about now, if feel free if you want to elaborate now, or we could stick with what you're saying, but how vision setting is without emotional clarity and how it can derail buying and follow through. I always find, because what you just said there, if people are going to continue to do the things in their role and duties to get, to raise their performance, to, that all lead up to that.
Yep.
Again, they also have to be mindful of that they don't burn themselves out at the same time, and they don't want to be obviously taken advantage of either. So like, how, can we talk a little bit about that vision setting, that when it's done without that emotional clarity, how that can now derail everything that you just said?
Well, I'll start by asking you to clarify even just a little bit of your question. Clearly, Chris, you have an awareness of that if you skip the steps of emotional intelligence and emotional awareness, that it clouds your vision. Why do you say that? What do you know about it?
Well, I know for a fact that if I get caught up in the control I can't control, and that is always somebody else's expectations, let alone my own,
right?
Or I get caught up in, just other people and what they're doing or not doing, then I'm always going to be now putting myself into that control I can't control. And what is the byproduct of that? I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to get overwhelmed, and I'm going to lose focus. I'm going to lose clarity and focus. And then all of those things have produced stress. They produced anxiety. And guess what? I'm going to burn out if that keeps going that way. I have to know. I got to use that thermometer to measure, again, bring it back to what I can control, what I can't control, so I can focus on my intentions and how I can find alignment with the other people I'm working with.
All the behavioral sciences, all the theories and approaches come back to a very simple, time-tested and verified principle. Human beings under stress resort to a reactive tendency: fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And your decision making is going to be clouded by fight, flight, or freeze, depending on what your personality is, if you are in a fearful, reactive, anxious state of mind. You will not create a clear, compelling, non-biased vision of the future. You'll only be reacting to what you're not happy with or you're afraid of. It's not a clear vision. It's not a picture of the future you want. It's more a picture of a future you don't want.
Exactly. And I think with a lot of listeners, Dr. Wayne, we do have people that, they do get caught up. They get caught up in this, and a lot of times, as you this because you do this for a living, how, burnout is very subtle. I mean, it
oh my gosh. Yeah. So subtle.
It's without warning, like all of a sudden you're like one day, like I can't get out of bed or
I thought it was here? I thought it was without warning. It felt
there's
like
there's
it was
warning.
without
There's warnings, but
when I look back, I ignored some symptoms for 4 or 5 years. builds on
It
itself.
does build. I know the body keeps score, and I
The
know
body keeps score.
yeah.
Yeah. But see, if you skip internalize, if you never allow yourself an hour to 2 hours on a Sunday evening just to sit back, pause, don't be busy, let yourself think, let yourself feel, do a little bit of internalization, but do a little bit of journaling, do a little bit of awareness in your body of what you're feeling. If you don't do that, you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
You're going to miss it. If you go straight to vision, operationalize, and timetable, you're going to miss it. If you miss it, now you're in reactive mode and you're not truly creating an organization of purpose. You're just firefighting.
That's so true. So true.
Cultures are built around organizations of purpose. They're not built around firefighting. Cultures are built when
it's so true. That's why there's so rare companies that there's no coincidence why they're like, okay, rated number one again to work for, or number in the top 5 for customer service, because they don't realize all those things are strategized and their top priority, and the bottom line is a byproduct of that. It's not the other way around.
It's not the other way around, right?
Yeah.
But one will follow the other.
Oh, they will. They will.
Right? Everybody really genuinely knows. If you quiz your listeners, they actually know that you can chase a high profit. You can chase a fast high profit, but it's short term. It's not sustainable, right?
Yeah.
It's a short term gain that is not sustainable, and so you're not going to be able to sustain that year after year, month after month. So if all you're after is a short term gain for any particular reason, it will work. If you're trying to build a long term stable organization, you can't build a culture, you can't build vision around firefighting.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
What would be some other things, as we're getting near the end of the show, but we still got time, that you have not discussed that you feel is important that the listeners should know and start looking into and applying to what we're talking about with what you're sharing here with the pivot process?
Emotional intelligence is central to exceptional leadership. Emotional intelligence is central to exceptional leadership. John Maxwell, in his 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, has a principle called the law of the lid. You ever know the law of the lid?
Yeah.
An organization will never outpace the leadership capacity of the leader of the organization, ever. It's a lid. The organization will never outgrow the leader's capacity to lead that.
Yeah.
A leader that is unaware of their own mental and emotional processes, they have a lower lid. They have a higher reactivity. They have a higher temper rate. They have a faster decision-making process, but it's not always well informed. They may be ego-driven. That also gets in the way. That organization is going to be limited based on the leader's emotional intelligence. Self-awareness and some self-reflection is probably, in my experience of 30 years, the central most important leadership competency.
Yeah, so true.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Just saw you just really shared so many valuable insights here. And if we're now looking at, what you've shared today, you shared a lot of great insights. You gave us a breakdown of each of the, what the pivot process is, from the PIV, OT on it. What would you like, just to, for the sake of today's show, to steer the listeners to a call of action, call of direction, to really own this, really start to say, I got to really look into this. Dr. Wayne has really awakened me that this is more important than we originally thought. What can you share to connect the dots, what you talked about, to get, to get them to take some action and direction with what
that yours and your organization's financial goals are measures. They're not the goal. They're measures of the goal. The degree to which you've created a compelling plan, a compelling vision that your teams, that your leaders, and that your customers can get behind and believe in, the clarity to which you've designed a strategic plan to achieve that vision, and the skill to which you provide accountability, the timeline, and the trackable tasks will all dictate your revenue and your EBITDA. If you're not happy with your revenue and your EBITDA, look at yourself.
Yeah. So true. So true. And like I said, I know, some public companies have short term, they got shareholders, they got to report every quarter. I get it, but you can't lose sight of the people that got you there. And people are not machines, and they're eventually, so there's got to be that harmony. So if they're not creating an environment or providing resources that are going to help to kind of, offset that and keep that harmony and creating a culture of that's what it's about, and then everything else is a byproduct of that produces results, then they're just like you said before, when you're going to react, and you're going to just constantly be putting fires out.
The old saying is that the tail's wagging the dog, right? Yeah. The tail's wagging the dog, and that just means the numbers are driving the organization, not the numbers are reflective of the vision and the quality of the strategy. That's all that means.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff, Dr. Wayne. We definitely want to have you back for another show here on Business Influencers. I know we're towards the end of the show, and I want to make sure there's time that you can share where people can, learn more about you, how to contact you, and so forth. But first, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule, not only for myself, but the rest of the team here at the Touch of Life Foundation and TALRadio.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah. Follow me on LinkedIn, Dr. Wayne Wilson, on my LinkedIn page. I do most of my content. I point there just because that's where my people are. That's where my group is. And then if you just want to connect and have a conversation, or you want to get a copy of my book, the book's on Amazon.com. The Pivot Process, 5 Moves That Transform Pressure into Purpose. And then CoachDrWayne.com is my website. They can find me there and book a conversation. That's how you find me.
Excellent. And we'll make sure everybody that, again, will all be in the show notes for Dr. Wayne, so you could reach out from the show notes. If there's something here that really hits you in a place where it should, that you should be taking action, we highly encourage you here at Business Influence. We're all about not only influence, but we're about change, and we're about moving forward. And that's got to start with you. You have to be the change. So again, everybody, Dr. Wayne, again, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed to bringing in subject matter experts like Dr. Wayne in each and every week to help raise your level of influence, whether on a personal or a business level, and taking it to where it's going to create impact. And it always starts with other people. Everything else is a byproduct of that. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week. We'll be back next week at the same day, same time, with another guest, sharing the words of wisdom and insights to help elevate your level of influence to the next level. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and take care.